Welcome back. This is session 13 at Ensuring Success 2025. We are almost through 2 days, but we have 2 great sessions left for you, so we are so glad you're still here with us. Or if you're just joining us, we're happy to have you here. Want to let you know a few housekeeping items. If you would like to post any questions for our speakers during this session, you can look right below this window. There's an Ask a Question box, and anything you post in there will get right to us on the set, and we can share it with our speakers. Second point is Ensuring Success 2025 would not exist without the support of our sponsors. So I'd like to read off those names real quickly. They are ADP, Avalara, Canopy, CPA.com, Digits, eFile for Biz, Field Guide, Carbon, Count, WriteWorks, SafeSend, Suralink, ValueInsights.ai, Wolters Kluwer, and Xero. Next thing I want to point out for you is that this session does qualify for CPE credit, and the way you get your credit is 3 times during the session we will post a code at the bottom of the screen, a 3-digit code. So you'll get 3-digit codes during this session. At the end of the session or the end of the day, whenever you're ready to get your certificates, you can go to the CPE/CE menu option at the top of our screen and click that and enter the email address that you used to register. If you haven't registered yet, not a problem. Enter your email address and you'll be asked to register. And then you'll be taken to the CPE screen where there is an option to click that says Claim Your Credit. You click Claim Your Credit and you'll be taken to another screen that lists all 14 of our sessions for this event. After each of those sessions, you can enter the codes that you've collected for each session and then click the Download Certificate button and download your certificate right on the spot. I, by the way, am Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. For this session, the session is bringing entry-level staff up to speed on CAS, and I'm going to introduce our panel here, which includes Christine Triantos, Kenji Kuramoto, Justin Kern, and Alexandra DeFelice, my co-moderator, and I'll have them each introduce themselves real briefly.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, Gail. This is amazing. My name is Christine Triantos. I own Infinite Advisors, which is a CAS consulting practice specifically to firms, and then Infinite Ties, which is a CAS community where we're focusing on staff, senior manager, upskilling, training from an advisory standpoint.
Okay, Justin.
My name is Justin Kern. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Dark Horse CPAs. We're a public accounting firm serving small, medium-sized businesses in tax and accounting advisory nationwide.
Kenji.
Howdy. I feel like I need to say that with the
you
great
do.
cowboy hats.
Hey, partner.
Here in Texas. Howdy, I'm Kenji Kuramoto. Excited to be back here for day 2, another panel here. I'm the founder and former CEO of Acuity. We were a CAS practice, but actually we started it again over 20 years ago, probably before we even knew what CAS was. So I'm sure we'll kind of get into topics like that and had to spend a lot of time explaining what CAS was, trying to hire people to put into CAS. So it should be a fun conversation.
And I am Alexandra DeFelice. I am, for the 13th time in a row, Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer for JMBM Law Firm, which is located in Los Angeles, even though I have a New York accent and a Dallas cowboy hat.
All right. I'd also like to mention that we would like to thank Xero for sponsoring this session, in case you couldn't tell. We're surrounded by it and wearing Xero gear. So the session being about bringing entry-level staff up to speed in CAS, I think the first thing we need to do is define what we mean by CAS.
I think Kenji is a good person because you've spent like your whole life in CAS, haven't you?
All right, except
Pretty
for the part
much.
of your life that was in Champaign, Illinois, going to my
That's
movie
true.
theater.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, so not quite from the teenage years, but yeah, a long time in CAS. I think it's something that we were all talking about together as we were doing some prep work about what is CAS, and sometimes it gets mixed in with advisory. And so I'd love to hear my other panelists take too. But we used to think about it as being different than advisory in that CAS was really the running of a client's accounting function for them. Like, right, we're in there doing that regular work of running the accounting function. So we're acting just like augmented staff, or maybe they're full staff for them. Whereas advisory is a little different, and that's how actually at Acuity we started as a pure just advisory firm doing just CFO level work. And yes, you're certainly holding down aspects of a client's accounting function in that CFO seat, but like we were also doing things like capital raises and financial modeling and forecasting and managing things like helping reporting on the board of directors. So I tend to see those a little bit of a different skill set when we come to advisory work versus CAS. However, I think very often we're seeing now that people are developing practices that have both of those elements. So there may be slight variations of those, but I'm curious to hear what Justin
and how for both of you, and how it's evolved too over time, because I think that's a story that we keep seeing with a lot of different trends.
Yeah.
I mean, same, we try not to age ourselves, but I started, 30 years ago.
Another theme.
Yeah. Started 30 years ago, my career. But we were early adopters in the CAS space about 15, 16 years ago. But I wrote down, when you said that, Kenji, it was like all the FP&A and everything that we were doing was before technology. Right. And so it was a whole different, planning and how you were providing those services to the clients, because we didn't have any tech to do it. And we were talking last night about Lotus and, even before Excel.
Really aging ourselves, yes, for sure.
Really aging ourselves. But, for us, and why I'm so passionate about the CAS community is we didn't have anything to really follow. Yep. And so I just always say, we messed everything up. We failed at so many things, and correcting those, but defining CAS was just such a huge topic for our partners, and how is it different, and isn't it this what we do over here, Christine? Right. And you're like, no, it's different. And so I think though the definition of where we've come today from a CAS perspective, based on what you said too, is come a long way, coupled with technology.
For sure. And what we were working on early on was just the topic that we're talking about today. How do we actually level up and train all of our staff? Forget entry level. It's senior managers. It's principals, and it started with the definition. And our approach, what we try to do is we try to whittle down. Okay, what are all the different activities that are happening within a CAS engagement? And when you get a little specific, at Dark Horse we broke it down into 3 buckets. We wanted to look at the compliance level activities, right? The bookkeeping, the monthly close process, the things that every business owner needs. And it had a little bit of a taste, it had a take on what they need from a tax standpoint. So we looked at base level bookkeeping. We then said, well, what goes beyond base level bookkeeping? You've got outsourced controller, you've got fractional CFO activities. Mm-hmm. Well, what does outsourced controller mean? There we focused on the people, the process, and the platform, or the technology used within the accounting function. It's ARAP, could be sales tax, it's payroll. It's some of the more extended items that as a business develops, they're going to also need, which becomes the outsourced accounting function. Right. Then there's advisory, which is still difficult to describe and define, but we've even broken that down into our own 3 buckets, so we know where we're playing. We're probably in the CFO light, maybe the CFO mid-range type of advisory. Once you get into CFO heavy services, you're meeting with the board of directors, you're helping in M&A deals, you're acquiring, you're selling, you're doing a ton of real estate transactions. We don't really play in that space, but it was important for us to define it so we knew exactly where we needed to find the tools to leverage the resources that are available and to best utilize our team to create an efficient engagement with each of our clients. So we just took a slightly different approach, trying to whittle it down as much as we could, so we knew where do all of our clients fall. How do I know when they move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3? And then what resources and tools are we using along the way?
I think, in hearing you describe that too, Justin, that's to me a great example of what a true CAS practice is doing. Because I think that what I saw over time was, in many cases, when we first started, back eons ago, it felt like in CAS, I would have former colleagues of mine when I worked in big public accounting say, well, aren't you just doing write-up work?
Right.
And do you remember write-up work was this old kind of notion of, it sometimes gets mixed up today with, is that CAS? Yeah. And I think it's very different, especially if you look at the way you described how Dark Horse is doing it. Write-up, as opposed to that, was we're just cleaning stuff up so we can get a tax return out.
Exactly.
And so I think that there's some firms that have struggled still making that leap into CAS. And they're not doing exactly like you guys have laid out all these these unique processes, because all they're still doing is kind of a version of write-up still. And that is going to create some problems in terms of like, how are you going to move forward? How are you going to train up staff? And so I don't know if you've seen that, Christine, but I think the write-up thing still hangs up some firms.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we consult with firms and they say, we bought a CAS practice. And you go in and you assess it, and a lot of it is still the write-up. And so it really is helping and just defining what you guys are talking about, defining what your ICP is, but then also what your service offerings that go with that. And what are your boundaries and barriers to entry, and what are you going to say no to, and absolutely say no. But now take that, and then do we have the right staff to build into this CAS space?
Yeah.
And I think we could get into that a little later, right? We have to take a little break.
We just want to, we're not going anywhere. We just want to post on the screen the first CPE code. So if you're looking for CPE for this session, you want to be sure to write down this 3-digit code. We will give you 2 more during the course of the session. All right, so let's start talking about what the training ground is like for moving people into this CAS service, no matter how your firm defines it, honestly, because it's really kind of going to be the same process as trying to bring people up to speed and making sure that they can provide the services that you want to offer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it starts with, I mean, we can build off what we were just talking about, like, right, and I think Justin described it really well with how Dark Horse approaches this. But if you think about those services being offered, to me, one of the biggest takeaways that is distinct from like audit or tax is this is talking about a service that is continually happening with clients. Like when you're in audit, like I was when I started my career, you're in tax, you can kind of have these intermittent exchanges with clients where they pass over information, you go work on it somewhere else. CAS is like happening continuously with clients, right? You're there working all the time with them side by side in their systems very often. So I think as you start, like, as we thought about this, we started thinking about, well, wait a minute, that's a very different type of training because this is a much more hands-on kind of role. And you're working and you're maintaining an accounting function for somebody. And so I think that's where we had to start with, like, how do you build training that emphasizes kind of this working side by side, communicating with the client on a regular, if not weekly, like daily basis, which you just don't do that when you're a tax person or auditor. You have those more sporadically. And then there are technology systems. I mean, you're working inside of their ledgers, whether it's Xero or wherever else, you're in there side by side with them. So the training starts looking different. And I think that's where, again, when we talk about write-up, that was oftentimes just, hey, let's grab some tax staff who aren't busy right now and plug them in and do a write-up, right? And you realize when you're doing a continual service for clients, that needs to be a unique staff and with unique training.
Well, it's funny because I was going to ask that question, like, do you let everybody on your team do it or not? Because it's like some people, they're just geeking out behind the numbers. You don't want to put them in front of a human, right?
Exactly. And we actually talked about this at dinner last night, too, about how the model is changing, right? Because you have these brilliant technical people, and they don't want to be front and center with the client. And in CAS, I don't know about you guys, but that daily conversation with the clients goes down to the staff senior, and they're like the front line on a regular basis. So it's finding somebody at that stage that's also comfortable with, communicating with the clients and email, on phone. And so, we're now saying, are those two different people? And we need a team that comes to do that from an advisory standpoint, too.
And then furthermore, how do you audit, I threw that word in there on purpose, how do you audit what they're saying and doing with those clients? Because it's like, it's one thing to say, I'll get back to you on a very specific tax question, right? Versus, guiding them in a way that you're like, I would have done that a little bit differently. How are you monitoring that?
So I think, there's tech that's helping us do that now with workflow products. So like all of the conversations and chat, it's all going in so you know exactly. What we did, though, too, was we were on every email, like we just had a group. And so you could just keep your finger on the pulse of what was going on and, what they were saying and train them, too, on this is when you bring this to the managers. But, I think what's important, a lot of this is are you bringing them into these conversations? Are they hearing you year over year over year? To your point, exactly, is how are they learning, and do they know what they're saying? And how can we help guide them of what's right and wrong that goes out to the client?
And what we're talking about is an investment of somebody's time into these staff. And when we build out kind of training and development and our own resources for these team members, for those of you that are listening in, if you don't have a codified steps in your process that you're willing and excited about sharing with a staff member, meaning like what we do, like we have our own learning and development system where we identified, okay, what's not available in the open market? There are things that are available, ways to train them up technically at least, right? You've got Xero certifications, you've got QuickBooks certifications, you've got certain certifications that create, you're not starting at 0, you're starting at 1 or 2. Perfect. So I don't have to recreate the wheel on that. But what is it lacking? Some of the softer skills that you were mentioning. How do I know that they're communicating correctly to the client? Well, every business owner and every senior manager knows the way that they should communicate. So there's a replication that you can create of that communication. And what are entry-level staff frequently asking clients about? They're asking questions. They're saying, I have an issue here. Do you guys know what this is from? Or they're trying to move the workflow forward, and they're stuck. And so those simple requests can be very easily templated. And if you took the time to spend, a half a day saying, okay, here are the 5 different ways you can request information from a client. And I want you to use these for the time being until you find your own voice. There's then an opportunity, once you actually have the meeting with the client, for staff to participate. But you have to want to invest in the fact that they're going to spend an hour of their day sitting and listening to a conversation that you had.
Which seems like it's not asking that much.
It's not asking much, but when everyone's overloaded and you've already got capacity problems, you've got limited staff members, it could sound daunting to say it. Now I got to pull them away and put them on a call.
Can you record those calls? What are some other options?
Or
exactly
utilization. Right. Then utilization comes in. You're like, oh, I can't bill that, and you can't be on the call, or that's too much unbillable time.
Or wait, because we have to get AI into every conversation. Or can AI make a video for you of what to do? I'm not kidding. Like make you a little chat bot and whatever.
Just build a chat bot.
That's the answer to everything.
We don't use AI necessarily in that way, but one way that is great to utilize AI is in the actual questions that roll up to senior staff members from entry-level staff. There's a natural, no matter how much training you give them or how much they're shadowing, there's bound to be questions because there's so much variety within a CAS engagement. So you can't answer it all. You're just trying to get them 80% of the way there. So what happens when they get stuck on the 20%? Historically, they have to go to the manager and be like, I'm stuck. What do I do here? AI has become an interim solution between going to your manager and finding the right answer. You may be able to, and what we encourage all of our teams to do is, have you asked ChatGPT yet? And I would recommend ChatGPT Pro, and as long as it's not confidential financial data for a client, there's no client information in there. If you're throwing in, I'm seeing these numbers, but it's not making sense, it's at least one step in the right direction of them trying to find the answer on their own fast before pulling in the time of the manager. Because if you start ingraining that idea into their head, like I want you to search for the answer, and then I want you to understand what the answer is, AI is actually great to do that. It explains it very well. It's in a lot of detail. It gives you an ability to ask more questions based on the answer. And so in a way, it alleviates the need for this constant back and forth with a manager, which I think is also subtly an area that people are concerned about. It's like, how much time is this going to pull from me to train and develop this staff?
Do the entry-level staff, though, even know what questions to ask?
It's a good question.
What would be some examples? Like you said, I'm seeing things with these numbers. Can you come up with an actual example of something that would be appropriate?
You're really putting me on the spot here.
It's the hat. It's doing things to me.
It is, yeah. I'd say that, and this gets back to your little original question around like where can AI and training help these staff, right? And I think a place that what AI has been very, very helpful in is around helping communication. And I think that in a CAS engagement, this is an overgeneralization, but it's not quite like an audit or tax engagement in terms of some of the technicality of the work you're doing. It's not like you're gonna get in and go, gosh, what is the SEC gonna say about the way I treat revenue recognition on this CAS engagement? That's usually not the kind of issues we're running into. We're trying to communicate better with the client to understand, like, hey, what is this transaction? What were you spending money on over here? This invoice, what are we billing a client for? And that's where we saw, and when we went over and had we have a large team in the Philippines, that was the team that actually, and they do a lot of our CAS work, that really got a huge lift out from AI because we focused on them using it to do some light research skills, but mostly on improving communication. Because sometimes they're a little bit nervous with interacting with US-based clients. And so having them help do some, and so an example we used to do with it was set up some role playing, like using AI, of like just practicing kind of going in, what if a client doesn't respond to this? What's maybe a better way to communicate? What if I get resistance to this suggestion? And so we used to use it kind of for some more role-playing activities that might occur in a regular engagement with clients. There was very seldom like really, really technical questions that we had to kind of go to some really senior level person. It was more around how do we situationally manage something that might be a little bit difficult for a younger, staff person coming up in there. So that's places we saw some really good lift by using technology or giving them, making it feel like there's something they were practicing that interaction with clients, because that's what's happening all day long. It's the interaction there. We're never having challenges because of, we didn't know how to do something technically. It's usually because there's a communication drop somewhere.
But I really like it as, we keep talking about is it going to replace people, but it's really not replacing them. It's just allowing the people to do more high-level things versus answering a question that they can find the answer to anywhere, right? And how much time, like that, they gain that extra time now, So I think that's a great idea.
And we always say though with AI though too is that it should not replace relationships. Right? And when you're getting into CAS and you're in advisory, it's all about the relationship, no matter what answers you're finding on ChatGPT, right? It's the storytelling, it's the proactive, it's all the things that shouldn't replace. And I think that that's where, a lot of firms are moving into that advisory space because, there are other things that are happening in audit and tax that are, from a compliance standpoint, but AI should never replace that relationship.
What are you seeing, as you mentioned when you are in the emails, where people are making mistakes, where the staff are making the biggest mistakes or most frequent mistakes?
I think that there's two separate things, right? There's the social aspect of it, and then there's the technical aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So they might have the right answer, but did they say it in the way that you would want it said? And now chat is like responding in emails and you're not even writing them anymore. And then there's the technical, is it right or wrong, right? So I do think we need to focus on both sides of the coin because they're equally important, especially in CAS, because like Kenji's saying, this is a daily relationship. You are with your clients on a weekly, daily basis, which is a totally different model than tax and audit. And so we just need to recognize that and build up these social skills that are separate from technical.
One of the challenging, as you say that, Christine, one of the challenging pieces that we saw very early on were staff were making mistakes in email. And it really wasn't as much like, hey, you debited the wrong account, or, those happen occasionally. Not only would it be a communication thing, but we'd see that because our team members are often interacting with the client so frequently, sometimes they feel a little bit more connected with the client. They're interacting with them more often than they are with us. And so we would see them sometimes saying yes to things like, okay, sure, I'll do that for you too. Next thing you know, things are getting out of scope. And I think that most of us who work in this profession and team members, we like to serve. We like to help people. And we were finding that the mistakes they were making was almost being overly generous with giving things away. And so we needed to protect their time a bit better. And back before we had technologies and tools that could see across emails or Slack messages or inside of a workflow tool like Carbon, we were never sure about what interaction was happening at a client location. And next thing, when things would blow up, we'd all of a sudden go, what happened here? And we'd look and go, oh my gosh, this poor staff person kind of felt pressured to kind of go and do all these different things that I wish we would have known about, and we could have stepped in and either coached them up to handle it differently or escalated to someone more senior because said, hey, time out, we're happy to help you, but we need to rescope this engagement. So that was an interesting one that was unexpected, but made sense when we thought about who our team was, that they were making those mistakes more often, just giving too much work away.
We've seen a lot similar, and it is based on that relationship, right? And what we try to guide and coach team members to do, there are some key phrases, keywords that you can identify and say, when a client says this in response to anything, just throw it up the chain, because it's almost always going to lead to something else. Another area, just because I don't want to forget about it, where staff members making mistakes if you have an incredibly written email, it's got all the correct information on there, and it's impossible to understand because you're not an accountant, you failed.
Yeah.
Right? If the information does not land with the client to where they have no idea what they're reading, or it's simply too long, you've spent all this time and energy and you did not accomplish the goal that you were hoping to accomplish because you've lost the client. You've lost it in the minutia of all the accounting work. And so much of it is actually trying to whittle down complex or very detailed explanations, which I think a lot of accountants are feeling empowered to share. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and so I want to be able to lay all this out. But the client has far less information, far less knowledge on what it is you're trying to say. So the client either bypasses the email, doesn't read it, answers one component of it, which is always a great trigger. If you would send an email with 5 things you need from the client and they answer one, it's because the email was too long or unclear, right? And they said, I'm only going to answer what I know and I'm going to forget all the other ones. Like, well, what about my other 4 questions? It's like, that's actually where the mistake is made.
And I actually am encouraging the marketing team at my law firm to use it for that reason. One, if we write an article and I'm just like, oh God, I'm like, this just seems so much legalese. Like, you can put it in AI and say, make this more for a layman. Or the hardest thing that working for having lawyers be my recipients of my emails is they want even the littlest. It's the grand irony, right? They'll write 18 pages to give me one sentence, but when they get the email from me, they just want the subject line, and that's about it. And it's just like, please, that's what my whole team struggles with, is how to make it shorter.
It's the TLDR, right? The section, which I think AI, for whatever reason, like, I only saw that in my life like a couple times before using AI, and now everything I write, AI gives me a too long didn't read topic. I had to
Did they give you that as a result, TLDR?
TLDR, and I had to find out what the acronym was. I was like, TLDR, what does that even mean? I was like, too long didn't read, this is genius, and it does it before every single one. And I'm like, well, this is perfect. Just throw that at the top so they know. I'll always give you the summary of what I'm saying so you have context and understand what's going on below. But the stuff that's going on below is to back up what I'm asking at the top. I think that's a great approach if you were to find a way to say, okay, well, how do I share complex or very detailed information to a client in a way that's going to land well? Well, one way is using chat, right, to do the TLDR section. Say, this is important, do not overread, like, you have to read this, and then dive into the rest.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take just a very brief break. Before we do, I'd like to mention that you've probably noticed that this conference is really a fun conference, not just for the attendees who are watching, because I'm sure you're having fun, but also a really fun conference for the speakers. And one of the fun things we do is we like to kind of rate the commercials that come our way. And so we're about to see a commercial break from Xero, which is hands down the winner of the most fun commercial that we have for this whole conference. So stay tuned for that, and as soon as it comes back, we'll give you your second CPE code.
All done, Sue?
Yep, and not just with your hair. With the help of Xero's small business accounting software, I've sorted my numbers too. So now I can take my business anywhere!
That was easy. Where to next?
Wherever we want.
Search Xero. We're the next.
Welcome back. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the second CPE code for this session. Thank you. There'll be one more. If you're planning on getting CPE for this session, be sure to record this. Let's see, where were we? Okay.
Well, we left off with too long didn't read.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And then when we were talking a lot about training, I want to know how involved in, like, how do you let your staff identify when a client could be an opportunity, like a prospect, to bring them to this kind of service if this isn't your main service line?
I think that varies because you have, it's educating the tax team a lot of the times of what would fit into our CAS. But then within CAS, it's saying, are you listening to the client? Are you asking the right questions to identify how do you upsell them, right? Because there's so many advisory services that are within our packages, and you're only using this, but we have this over here.
So it's two different things.
Yes.
I think once you're in CAS, upselling might not be as difficult as it would be to cross-sell from tax to CAS, and I think that's probably where most of this audience would be. So can you start with that one?
From the tax?
Yeah.
I could throw in. I actually think it's much easier to cross-sell from tax to CAS. If you were to, I'm sure maybe it's equally as easy as upselling in CAS to CAS. But the reason why is because you could, no matter what level the staff is, if you're doing business returns and you're getting books that are a complete mess, that you look at and go, what am I doing here? That is an immediate, that feeling. When the second you feel that feeling, I need you to reach out to this person and say, hey, here's a candidate, because I've got to now clean up these books that are a total mess and nothing makes any sense to me. And I'm going to do that. Hopefully they're charging for it. Hopefully you're charging for it. You're going to do that, and then that should immediately be a channel down to CAS saying, this is exactly the type of client that we need to take on, because we need to level them up at least a compliance level if we're going to now expand them into any other service within CAS. We tried to implement a rule with our tax engagements. If a tax engagement comes in and they don't want to use us for CAS, that's fine, because they said I already have somebody handling the CAS work. Often it's an in-house person. We say, great, if you have the 1 in a million bookkeepers that happens to know what they're doing, then we will give you a shot for 1 year. After that year, if you give me the books and they're a mess, you have a choice. You can talk to one of our CAS teams, or maybe this isn't the right fit to work with you on tax.
Fire them.
And it needs to be a reality, because for too long, I don't think for a long time, businesses maybe didn't recognize the value within that compliance level CAS, which means they're not going to be able to recognize the value on expanded CAS services. And there's a ton of opportunity there to make an impact. And it starts with the tax side. And they will be able to identify it very, very quickly come tax season. So as long as you have a process in place on 1, what are you identifying? 2, who are you going to let them know that this is a problem? And then if you want to be bold enough to say, if I keep getting these books and they look like this come tax season, we're not working together. But I have a solution for you. It happens to be in-house. Yep.
But also identifying like questions that you give the tax team to say, if you see these things in this industry, line, let us know. Or ask this question and get us in front of that client. So it's also kind of just hand-feeding them like that question.
And also, it's one thing to be able to provide the services, but to be able to sell that's a scary word, right? And they feel even more uncomfortable because then they're getting rejected. And how do you teach them how to sell?
Selling CAS is different because you have audit and tax that's compliance. CAS is like optional, right? And we want this. This is a service that has value. And I think as accountants, we don't know growing up in public accounting, what's our value? And the CAS is putting yourself front and center on that value proposition. So selling CAS, and I say this lightly, but selling CAS is easy because clients want it, and they don't want it in-house. They don't want oversight. They don't know when it's right or wrong, And so I always say, we'll give you A to Z, and at the end of the day, if you don't like what we've done, we'll gladly put you back on your manual processes, and you can go on your way, and you don't even have to 30-day notice. You don't have people leave.
I'm not sure if you did this, but we over the years would put together all kinds of programs and incentive plans for like, hey, if you identify this, let's comp you, right, for selling more services. And what we found, and maybe this was unique to us, maybe not, was rarely did that ever happen. And most of our folks working, whether it's in tax or CAS, they like doing that work. Selling, even though CAS should be very easy to sell, so many accountants I just don't like to sell. I don't like to do that. And so I'm like, man, are we not making the incentives high enough, or what are we not doing? We finally just said, you know what, we're going to have a separate team for that. We're going to have a separate team for that. I thought initially we're going to have people upset, like, well, I don't want to.
Why don't I get to do it?
Why don't I get to do it? And actually, it was the opposite. Our team was like, "Thank you for taking that. Like, I don't mind identifying it and like whispering, putting the message over here that I think we've got an opportunity, and then letting someone in sales or account management take that." And so that might have been. I think a lot of accountants are that way. I know our team was mostly that way, and they actually really liked it when we brought in someone else to come and address that, because I'm with you, Christine. I think CAS is such an easy sell, but when I think about our team, it's not always easy for accountants.
It's just give them the questions and what they should be looking at.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I totally agree. We don't have We have specific people that sell. They happen to be the principals or the CPAs on the team, but we do a very, very diligent, we have a very diligent process in how we train and review and coach, because that is a very difficult thing to get right. So I would not necessarily expect to extend that down to additional staff members within that team, because there's a lot of other areas that they need to be very confident in that influence their ability to sell. And so we want to get them confident there first, and making sure that they can identify opportunities. Because right now, most CPAs, if you've been doing this for a long enough time, you can see the things, it's innate in your ability, right? You're looking at this and like, I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know what the problems are, I know what the solutions are. And it's really just about how you're communicating that to the client that we try to train our teams on. Like, we want to make sure that we take your expertise and all that knowledge that you have and communicate it correctly to a client or a prospect to increase the likelihood of them saying yes to you and not somebody else. But we don't do that first.
I would add, too, I think what's equally important to train your staff on is the engagement letter and statement of work, for them to 100% know exactly what's in that scope. Because the more that they start to read that and they know what's in the scope, they know also what's not included, and can bring that as an opportunity as an upsell, too.
100%. And this is also where tools like Carbon, which is what we use in-house, become so important, because you have this documented workflow where if something outside of that comes up, it's not in the workflow. Right? So I actually see and know the scope, because that's how I'm operating through my day-to-day. And it just helps creating that transparency, and I 100% agree, right? You have to pass this information along. There's not, although you may say, I don't want to give too much information to my staff, I truly believe that the most information, the amount of information you give them is going to directly correlate to their confidence level within each of their engagements. They don't have to review everything. They don't have to read an entire engagement letter, but they need to know where to access it and how to and know and trust that it's accurate.
And identifying the scope down to, like, this is 5 bank accounts, this is 10 credit cards, whatever. So you're protecting your pricing strategy and structure, right? So that it's like, oh, you know what, they added all of these, great, we're going to go back and we're going to renegotiate fees, because that should not be at the firm's detriment.
Right.
Yeah.
If we hop back to training for a minute, and you were just mentioning some, training that might be needed to, understand the engagement letter or the scope of the project. When people are coming into the firm, whether you define CAS as accounting services or advisory services, or however you're presenting your service line to your clients, but you're bringing people into the firm who are either coming out of school or coming out of a very traditional accounting background that maybe hasn't provided these types of services. Are there any training opportunities outside of your firm that you've found that are great, like schools for CAS?
Christine, do you know of any?
I mean, this is like, we just thought that this was a gaping hole, right? Because most of the training that we see and that firms have is, audit tax that's then, adjusted to CAS, rather than it being very CAS curated.
Right.
And, that we're talking about all the things that you do with your clients on a daily basis. That's not in any of the training.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not in school.
And it's not in school. You don't get that in school. Plus, on top of that, you now have technology training that's absolutely necessary with the technical training. And so, not to to promote that, but yes, that's what the space that we're trying to fill. And being practitioners, my other business partner, being practitioners for the last 30 years, being on that front line, getting, shot at by clients of what you did right and wrong, we just want to curate that for these staff, seniors, managers, soft skills, advisory skills, because it's, and I mean this in the best way, it's just not coming from the audit tax training.
And I did kind of cue that up for you, but I was wondering beyond that. I mean, because I just don't hear of it anywhere within the profession, that kind of training.
It's starting. I mean, I think what Christine and Deneen and her team are doing, we're seeing more of that. Because I will tell you, we were 2 decades ago, when we were out here feeling like we were on an island doing this by ourselves. We were looking for anything, like any kind of help we could get whatsoever. And there really was not back then. Again, it was just not, that didn't exist. And so it's nice seeing this happening. I think yesterday on our panel, we were talking to Michelle from Cohn Resnick, and she was talking about having interns from college who are going in their CAS practice. So we're starting to see that a little bit, which was exciting.
That's fascinating.
I know that some dear friends have helped kind of over, I think it's at Utah Valley University, build a little bit of a CAS track inside of that university. My friends Brittany Brown and Dan Luthi, which is really, I mean, it's early days, but it's really exciting to see that. But it's early. There's not a lot of those there. So you'd have to do a little searching. But I'll say, to me, right now, looks like there's tons of it compared to when we were coming through. And you're saying the only thing we used to do when we used to train people outside of the technology training on our tech stack was you'd come in and you'd shadow one of our existing team members, because it was such an on-the-job learning type of environment and working with clients. So all we knew how to say was, well, your first couple weeks, you're not going to work with any clients. You're going to work alongside and kind of shadow a few other team members. And that's the best we felt like we could get, because there was nothing really out there.
There wasn't anything. And to us, too, it's like you need to have client examples in a sandbox, and you need to be able to touch it, but also in just buckets that you can absorb it. Right? Because you throw all, like, firms love to just throw all this training at people, and it's like, was that just to check the box, or did they really, really grasp the concept and how to apply that across all of their clients, regardless of what industry they're in?
So we have some questions coming in after a short pause. Can we?
Yeah, we are going to have a really short pause, and it's just because we know that you probably really enjoyed that commercial a few minutes ago and didn't get enough of it. So we're going to run it one more time, and at the end we'll show you the final CPE code for this session.
All done, Sue?
Yep, and not just with your hair. With the help of Xero's small business accounting software, I've sorted my numbers too. So now I can take my business anywhere!
That was easy. Where to next?
Wherever we want.
Search Xero. We're the next.
She says.
Welcome back.
See it.
And on the bottom of your screen, you'll see the third CPE code for this session. So be sure to write this down if you're planning on getting CPE for this session.
I'm kind of excited.
Thank you,
here.
Kenji.
So excited to get to do that. Thank you.
People love it. Okay, so are you okay? I could go ahead and ask some questions. Okay, so the first one is going to be for, it's so funny. People are like, what does it stand for? Is it this or that? Like, they keep asking the question. I'm like, just call it what you want it at this point, right? But where's that? Okay, so, wow, more questions keep coming in. I had the one I was going to do it. Okay, Christine. Within CAS services, is there a process to train up the client's in-house bookkeeper as a third option?
The client's bookkeeper?
Yeah, their in-house one.
It doesn't seem to be part of CAS.
You know, I pause because it.
No, the answer is no.
The answer is no, because you just can't price it. There's just not a lot of margin in that service offering to upskill the client's internal bookkeeper. Do we have those? Yes. But do we want to train them? No.
Kenji, how can firms use offshore staff to manage entry-level and compliance work, freeing current staff to grow in CAS roles?
Yeah, I remember when we first started using offshore staff, there was some, and probably like when many people step into this, there were some of our US team members who were kind of nervous of like, well, wait, what am I going to do? And very quickly, they realized it was freeing them up for much more kind of client interaction, account management type of work. And so, yes, I'm a huge believer, proponent of using offshore team members. Again, I think we just mentioned earlier, like tools like AI, having workflow tools, the Canopies of the world, the others, that allow you to work together on things, help, I think, really lift offshore folks and have better communication with clients and things. So I'd highly, highly recommend it. I think in many cases, too, one thing that we experienced, and again, I may overgeneralize here again, when we had very structured workflows, the team members who would usually resist those very structured workflows was usually our US team, and the higher up we went into advisory, they were like, well, I don't need to follow a checklist. the team members that actually really, really loved good, solid workflow was our international team members. And I think where we saw, especially in the Philippines, and I asked them this when I was there, and they said, we just really like having very clear directions. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing, but we found that over and over again to where, and again, I think the lower levels of a transactional accounting and CAS practice, you need to have some very clear steps. And we always just found great compliance amongst our international team, not because I think we felt like we had to. They were just accustomed to that. It was a way to communicate to them. Whereas sometimes our U.S. team members was like, well, let me freestyle with this a little bit. And you're like, no, please don't do that. And so that said, where you want the freestyling is a little bit an advisor. You want people to get a little creative. And so it does free up, I think, U.S. team members for a little bit more of that creativity, whereas we found that our international team liked the really, really structured work.
I would just add to that, though, too, because where we consult with firms, but what we see that really is successful and resonates is when you're building those international teams at the higher levels as well. It's not just that, below manager. It is, teaching them the advisory. Whether you want them to be your client facing, that's different. But the technology training and the higher level manager advisory training is phenomenal. Or it can be if you build it right. Yeah.
Justin, what was the biggest challenge that you had with training, with getting your staff up to speed on what they were going to be doing?
Before we had everything codified,
Yeah.
it was just simply going through that definition, which is why I put so much emphasis on that originally.
Yeah.
Because once we had the definition, we were able to identify where there were gaps in the training and development that we created. Because most of our training prior to implementing our LMS was very ad hoc and one-to-one, sometimes one-to-many, hour and a half long, right? Not a lot of retention. Like the whole thing was a nightmare, no tracking. And I think that's, every business starts out like that. I got to do something. So we're just going to get all together. We're going to all talk about this. I'm going to have no organization, no knowledge check, nothing. I'm just going to give you all of it and hope to God you retained it. And what shifted for us is that we systematized onboarding specifically to where onboarding is a 2.5 to 3 week process for every staff member. So someone gets hired at entry level, they don't get handed to a principal to actually do any work for 3 weeks, because their whole first 3 weeks is about understanding the systems that we use, understanding the workflow tools, understanding the tasks that they're going to be responsible for, knowing who you go to for certain questions and information. And when we documented and codified that, it allowed each of those people to feel very empowered at the onset of their job, which that is the most stressful time of anyone. It doesn't matter actually what level you're at.
Yeah.
The first month at a job, you're just like, am I faking it? Do I like this? No one knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So our goal was, I need to instill confidence in this person outside of the work, because they're going to get into that too. But I want to get them very, very confident first, so they feel like they know where to go, they know what's going on, they know what the systems are, they know how to use them, they know where to go if they have a question, they know who to go to. They have all these resources. And now, feeling good about where they stand today, they're diving into phase 2, which is going through the actual work. Now, going through the actual work and that training, unfortunately, we are still at a place that Kenji was talking about, which is it's very hands-on shadowing.
Yeah.
Because every client is a little bit unique. But what they do know is the system that they're in to perform the work. So they have confidence in one piece of this puzzle, and we're guiding them and coaching them on repetition on the other. And repetition is key. There is no amount of training you can give somebody that's going to replace repetition. I need reps for every single team member. And we know we're not going to get real leverage out of a entry-level staff for 6 months. Like, we already know that. That first 6 months is about making sure that they fully understand and grasp what it is I have them doing. We also get it's not creative, but we have 2 paths that an entry-level staff can go down when it comes to the work and responsibility they have. They could have a variety of responsibilities for a set group of clients. You have 5 clients, you're doing all these things for these 5 clients. Or, and we call that vertical responsibilities.
Right.
You could have horizontal responsibilities where you're doing the same 3 things for 20 clients.
Yeah.
And you got to pick which one you're going to have them do. Where I think people fall short is they have them do different things for different clients, vertical and horizontal, and this person can't get a grasp of what it is they're trying to actually accomplish. And their reps, they're not valuable because they're so infrequent and they're so sporadic. Get it consistent, give them the process, give them that roadmap and say, here's exactly what I need you to do and how I need you to do it. And as you graduate, I'll now give you another set and another set. And I think everybody
Who
that's listening,
decides when they graduate?
their manager.
Does the vertical or the horizontal work better, or does it depend on the person?
Depends on the person, and depends on the book of business
Okay.
that's being handled.
Okay.
Some of our practices have, just a handful of CAS engagements, so what they need is somebody who's doing a multitude of different things across all of them. Some of them have a ton of CAS engagements and tax engagements, and they need to spread these couple tasks across CAS and then move them over to tax as well. So it just depends on the practice makeup.
In our last few minutes, do we have any stories of, gee, I wish I'd done it that way instead of this way, or things that didn't quite go the way you thought they would?
We need a whole.
Oh yeah,
We only have 5
That
minutes.
should have been
Yeah.
the first session, first
Yeah.
question of the day.
I mean, I guess I'll say that as it get mentioned a few times, especially around training. And training and workflow tools is one thing. Over 2 decades of having a CAS practice, we had lots of different workflow tools. We had lots of different ways we were trying to train. And what we eventually saw was that our LMS, our learning management system, and our workflow kind of became one and the same. And I wish we would have thought about that earlier on, because we were kind of investing in 2 different systems, and we'd have this trainings very sporadically. And sometimes you need to do that with your tech stack. But otherwise, we're like, wait a minute, why aren't we just building in, when you think about a service you're delivering, whether that's month-end close or invoicing or payroll, we're like, there's a way that we think that should be done appropriately. Well, why don't you just build the workflow, but the training in the same thing? You're getting, it almost reinforces the concept you talked about, Justin, of getting reps. And so you need to kind of revise that training, and you'd like the team to get into a rhythm of kind of real-time training, a continual training. And we're like, that's just the workflow. So our workflow, what steps do I do today across these clients? We always said they should also function the same way, that you should be able to follow them through and kind of get reinforced training and learning about that as well. And so I wish we would have thought of that concept. It seemed to kind of be like, that makes sense, that's logical. Because I think we used to waste a lot of time, like, let's go build a whole separate learning management platform over here. And then workflow, we got to make a decision over here, when really they should be a reinforcing agent to each other. And so I wish we might have saved ourselves a lot of headache, a lot of cost over the years of just thinking of those 2 being much more intertwined.
One area that comes to mind for us, early on we relied heavily on vendor training on their software, which tended to be more generic in nature. And I wish earlier on we decided to grab, that our team got ingrained enough into that software to where we customized, which is what we currently do now, the training to match and meet the needs of our clients the way we serve them. I think we have a very limited amount of time, and also just kind of limited mental capacity to learn information. And often some of the off-the-shelf trainings, half of this doesn't apply to us. This is just noise. You're not actually responsible for it. But it was easy because I don't have anything put together. So I just go through these 17 courses that fill in the gap vendor created. They're great trainings, but for what we needed, knowing that people have a limited capacity, I really wanted to make sure that they understood how to use the system the way that we use it, with examples that correlate to our workflow and our clients. I think that was something we waited too long to do.
And I would just say quickly too, pause, be strategic, and build instead of just racing after the client that you just sold, trying to fill that spot. Just pause, focus on training, focus on your team, be strategic with your goals, plans, long-term, and build.
Very smart.
Great. All right, well, thank you all very much. And we'd like to thank Xero for sponsoring this session, and thank all of you for being with us through this session. And we have one more left, so don't go away. You're going to want to come back for our session on...
Calling the IRS?
IRS.
It's on the IRS and tax resolution. I don't have the title in front of me.
Yeah, it is.
Tax stuff.
It is stand up for your clients,
That's it.
tax resolution and communicating with the IRS.
There it is. All right. We'll
At
see
top
you
of
at
the
the
hour.
top of the hour.